team. This is the Innovation Inc. podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Brown Evans. We sit down with our favorite entrepreneurs and nerd out on anything that involves innovation in the corporate space. So if you work for a corporate company, but you think like an entrepreneur, we're your people, and we're really excited you're here. Before we jump in, a huge thank you to our sponsor and Inc. 5000 company, Apex Software. They create powerful custom software, websites, and mobile apps that take your business's innovative ideas and turn them into realities. Reach out today to get a quote at apexsoftware.com. All right, everyone, let's get to it. Hey, everyone. It is Liz Brown Evans. We are back on the Innovation Inc. series of the Awesome Inc. podcast. For those of you who have not listened to the only other innovation incubation series that we've done. A little bit of background. You've heard me previously on some Awesome Inc. episodes. Garrett and I have interviewed a bunch of really exciting corporate innovators together, and we are officially launching our own mini series for corporate innovation under the Awesome Inc. podcast. So we used to be called Venture Labs. I won't go into the details, but we are rebranding to Innovation Incubated. And as a little refresher, we work with companies to make strategic, innovative decisions using some of our expertise we have after working 12 years with entrepreneurs. We cannot believe it has been that long. So I'm not going to go into more of my details because you can find that at innovationincubated.com. But today I'm excited to introduce you to Alex Reed, who is actually a repeat guest on the podcast. So you can go to episode number, I don't think we have that prepped. You can find it in the show notes. But Alex Reed was on the podcast 2 years ago. And Garrett interviewed him a bit more about entrepreneurship and his journey in that regard. A lot has changed in 2 years. So we're excited to bring him back on a bit under the lens of corporate innovation. But Alex, I'm going to let you take it from here. Tell us a little bit, maybe a quick refresher. People aren't going to go back and listen to the episode.
Episode 14.
Oh, that's great, Garrett. Episode 14. Wow. You're like early digits.
Yeah, he's one of the OG.
That was season 1. I don't think we have seasons, but we'll call it season 1. Take it from here.
Well, thank you, Liz. Good morning to you both. Excited to be a second-time guest. You burst my bubble a little bit earlier when you told me I wasn't the first second-time guest, but still feel honored and privileged to be here with you all and excited about the conversation. So quick background on me. I spent the first decade of my career with a company right in your all's backyard called Big Ass Fans. A lot of people know the brand, know the story. It was a very, very high-growth company. A lot of innovation, a lot of excitement, and ultimately a very large exit for the region at the end of 2017. So I cut my teeth in my career there, started as an intern, and when we exited, I was the global head of marketing for the company. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but a lot happened in between internship and exit. And on the heels of that exit, I actually co-founded a direct-to-consumer cleaning products company with the former COO at Big Ass Fans. So we were itching to do something more entrepreneurial once we left Big Ass, and we launched that company in 2018 and then recently exited that in March of this year, 2021. So I've been busy. I've been busy for the first, what has it been, 13 years of my career.
Yeah, I hear you're taking a vacation weekend. Is this your first in 13 years?
I keep telling everybody it's fun employment, but the reality of it is I've been working with a handful of brands ranging from billion-dollar companies to early-stage startups. It's definitely lower pressure than some of the environments I've been in, but still fun. I mean, I'm a business junkie. I love getting to know new markets, new categories, and so it's been fun for me to kind of sit back and look at other people's problems for the first time in my career.
That's awesome. For those who are Twitter fans, I would highly recommend a follow of Alex on Twitter. He doesn't think he has a following or is funny yet. I personally disagree, and I'm here to launch your Twitter celebrity status. So, well, Alex, today I think we want to focus a lot. I would love to hear a little bit more about your experience at Big Ass Fans. Certainly in the region, it's known for being a very innovative company. Like you said, that was high growth very quickly. And then we kind of want to transition a little bit later, maybe near the end of the episode, to Truman's and hearing a little bit more about that. But to start, tell us a little bit about what corporate innovation looked like at Big Ass Fans.
Yeah, that's a great question because Big Ass Fans was a very unique business in a lot of ways. I think number one was it was a bootstrapped founder-led company for the entirety of my time there, all the way through exit. No outside investors, no board. no governance of any kind, really. So, there's good and bad with that. And I think from an entrepreneurial standpoint, there was absolutely nothing standing in the founder's way if he wanted to take large bets, make new investments, things that others may be more cautious about. So I always say he was an entrepreneur. One of the things he really relished, I think, was new ideas, new perspectives. And a byproduct of that was we had a very young working culture. I think the average age for my time there was probably 30 years old. You were definitely one of the senior leaders if you were 30 years old. And that's because you don't know what you don't know when you're inexperienced. And I think that that sort of ignorance can be helpful in an entrepreneurial environment. You're not afraid of risk. You never really failed, so you don't even know what that feels like. You're curious. So these were qualities that were really admired and encouraged. And I think really described me to an extent, and why the founder, the CEO, really took me under his wing at an early age. I was shocked when he even talked to me as an intern, and it turned into more conversations, collaboration, opportunities to run campaigns with budgets like that made my eyes pop as a 20-year-old kid, and then continually and progressively picking up more experience. So, ultimately getting to run small portions of the marketing group, getting to launch our first consumer product in that whole business, getting to run all of marketing at some point, and it was just progressively asking for more and more. And that sort of, we call it entrepreneurship, was really in the DNA of the business. If you were aggressive, you were a go-getter, you were a hard worker, you were going to be rewarded. You didn't have to be the smartest person. You didn't have to have a Harvard MBA. If you had grit and energy, you were going to get opportunities in one way or another. And so that was really fun for me. I tell people it was like entrepreneurship without the personal risk. I got to kind of make these bets and try things and experiment in more of a controlled fashion. But it was really helpful for me in my career at that stage to have those opportunities. And certainly, I think failure teaches you a lot. And when you can fail in a controlled, safe environment, I think it's the best of both worlds. So I will forever be grateful for the experience I had there. And it's just a cool company. A lot of money invested in R&D, a lot of new product launches, a lot of just aggressive go-to-market strategies. And I think we're seeing more of it, and certainly what we all want here in this conversation, but we want more companies pushing for change and innovation in the region and taking bets. And Big Ass Fans was really ahead of its time in that regard.
You mentioned that there was kind of any idea on the table. Was there structure of any sort of innovation, or what? It sounds like it was built into the DNA of any idea goes. If you've got it, take it and run with it. But was there any level of a system or a playbook that you guys were working with on how innovation worked?
Yes and no. I think there's the squishy culture answer, which is one of those kind of indescribable qualities, what makes a culture unique. But I'll say this, when you're named Big Ass Fans, you're going to attract a certain type of person that's willing to go against the grain and, tell your grandmother that you're working for Big Ass Fans. So I think there was a natural magnetism for that type of talent at the business. I also think there was a lot of that management by walking around philosophy. So you have a little bit of a meritocracy that you create with that management style, because everybody has a voice and the best ideas can rise to the top. Even, like I said, if you're just an intern sitting in the corner minding your own business, you're going to get drawn into it. Structurally, I do think they operated the company, they, I guess, being all of us collectively, in a way that allowed for entrepreneurship. There were, budgets that were dynamic. So if you wanted to do something, just because it wasn't in the budget at the beginning of the year, you could go out and get more money. And that really ties back to it being, sole proprietorship. If the founder wanted to make $1 at the end of the year because he poured all of the profit into new investments, that was his prerogative. And so I think that agility and flexibility with budgeting was one important structural piece. And then the other, I think, was that we were very agile from an org design standpoint. We were never married to this very layered and rigid, okay, after 5 years, you're, at this level of the company, 10 years, you're here. The business was reinventing itself continually. And so there were, I mentioned earlier that I got to launch the consumer product business. Well, that business unit didn't exist. And so there weren't roles. There were roles created to support that new business. And so when you're constantly launching new businesses within your business, you're creating new opportunities. And so we always had a very flat org structure because we needed to be able to repurpose talent constantly. And I think that also, spurs this entrepreneurship because, again, you're not on the track of a mature business like a Procter & Gamble where you know exactly what you're going to do after 2 years there, after 5 years there. That's really reflective of a high growth company where you just don't know what roles are going to exist in 5 years. And that attracts a certain type of person. I mean, some people are uncomfortable with that and some people love it. And they say, I'm just going to work hard and, I'm excited for what may be there for me in a couple of years that doesn't exist now.
So you've spoken already a little bit to even budgets and structure. What was the general disposition towards pitching ideas? Risk is a big topic that comes up with a lot of the companies that we talk with. How do you approach risk? How do you analyze risk? And then maybe even get into communication between R&D and sales and marketing. I think that funnel is something that it has a lot of friction in a lot of companies. Something can be brought up in the lab, but to actually execute and get it to market are two very different things. So I'm curious how Big Ass Fans approach those topics.
Yeah, I think risk was very tolerated. I mean, just to put it bluntly, we were a collaborative organization, though. Ideas could come from anywhere. Product ideas could come from sales and marketing. Marketing strategy ideas could come from engineering. There weren't walls that I think you see with a lot of businesses where people felt like they were stepping on other people's toes. And that kind of speaks to the culture piece where it was this everybody walking around, getting to know each other. There were beer fridge days if we had, a high sales number. And again, you get a cross-pollination of everybody. There were intentional efforts made to bring diversity of thought into conversations. So you knew your engineering counterparts. Before we started talking formally on this podcast, Liz, we were talking about an old friend that we both share. And, he was in engineering. He and I ended up traveling a lot, doing work with Google, Apple, Amazon on the tech side. And he was bringing much more of a product and technical perspective to it. I was bringing much more of a marketing perspective to it, but there was crossover. And I think that was one of the things we tried to formalize as much as you can, but by throwing cross-functional teams at projects. As far as the budget question goes, it was a living document. I mean, I haven't been inside of that many companies, but the ones I have are much more rigid in terms of the process you have to go through if you're going to go outside of your budget, and it's very arduous. Here, it was extremely flexible. I think big bets were made, probably too big at certain times. I mean, that can be one of the scary things and frustrating things. And so I definitely think there's some duality to this type of culture and environment. But generally speaking, the bottom line was not important to the founder. And so the buck kind of stopped there, literally, where he would say, I'm not in business to make money. I have to make money to be in business, to keep this going, to invest in the company, to hire more people, but it's not why I'm doing this. And that philosophy permeated, I think, to where we all sort of had our eye on growth and top line, much more than how can we squeeze, another 6 points of margin out of this product line. And that was fun. And that was, frankly, why I wanted to do something different on the other side of the transaction, because I think that sort of that sort of operating mentality is just unique in the region. It's unique in business in general. And it was a lot of fun while we were in it.
And I think you're naming the elephant in the room to some of the executives, I'm sure, who are sweating listening to this podcast of how Big Ass Fans functions. I think it's a healthy reminder that it's a spectrum, right? No company has to be all one or all the other. I think there are benefits to both sides. And I would love to hear a little bit what were some of the worthwhile downsides of working at a place with this sort of constant kinetic, maybe frenetic energy at all times?
The rate of change was hard. And I'm somebody that's incredibly open-minded and easily bored and likes, the shiny new thing as much as anybody else. But as you get bigger, those turns on a dime can be painful because you've invested a lot of energy, time, manpower, especially if you're leading a team. Now I've got to go communicate to my team that all of this work that we've done, we're going to take this in a completely different direction. That can be a bit draining. I think it's a trade-off where you don't want this inertia to where we can never change once we set our course. But the reality is when you've invested time and energy into something, it can be disheartening, it can be discouraging at times when you're scattered. And at times I do think we almost took on change as a persona, like as a cultural persona, meaning like we were addicted to it. If we hadn't reorganized the company in the past 12 months, it was like, okay, we got to change things up. And like we were constantly moving floors. I mean, we were rearranging the office. It was like we
so not even theoretical change. You guys were physically moving things around.
Yeah, there was like this discomfort with anything that was static. And I think like at times it can be on the worst side, I'd say, it's disheartening, but it's also distracting. It can be unproductive if you're changing just for the sake of change. So, there's always trade-offs. Like you said, things are on a spectrum. I would rather err on the side of agility and willingness to react to things quickly. But with that, I think comes overreactions, unnecessary change that creates communication issues where not everybody's on the same page. And so as you get bigger, I notice that becoming more of a challenge for the company because you have a lot more people that are involved. It's when you've got a 100-person team, the challenges are a lot different than when you have a 1,000-person team. You have international offices and you've got people spread out in multiple buildings, even around town. The challenges of changing quickly become much larger. And that's something that I think makes it hard for large companies, but also makes it worth pursuing is how do we set this up to where if we are going to be agile, we do it without fumbling all over ourselves. We communicate properly. We make sure everybody's in sync with this new change or new direction. That's part of the fun. And you see big companies like Amazon, biggest company in the world, and they do it. I mean, they have structure that allows them to be quick and enter new businesses and do new technologies and accept failure. It's definitely possible. So whether you're early stage business and it's easy because there's 3 of you, or you've got tens of thousands of employees, I think it's aspirational. It's something that businesses who want to be around over the long run should try to do.
We should call Jeff, see if he changes floors frequently at Amazon or buildings, probably. He's like, New York, you're going to Hong Kong today. Before we get off this topic, I'm curious to hear, I want to lean in a little bit more into the topic of people. A big trend or topic that keeps coming up in conversations is how to retain or attract and retain good talent. What was that like? And you mentioned a little bit, it can be disheartening if you've worked on something for 3 months and then the boss walks in and says, thanks for your effort, but we're moving this way. What was it like both attracting and retaining people or maybe not retaining people that weren't a fit?
Yeah, I think to answer the first part on the attraction side, you've got to think about it competitively. What are the alternatives for people? When you're small, you're recruiting mostly regionally. Because, somebody's not going to move cross country for a huge gamble necessarily. It's more difficult to recruit people from a national talent pool. And so how do we make ourselves a more attractive employer than others in the region? I mean, there's compensation, There's the type of work that you're getting to do. There's the culture, the perks. We were always innovating in terms of things. We even had our own currency called fanny chips. I don't know if that's still around. Where instead of just giving people cash bonuses, they were chips that you could redeem for like a restaurant gift card in town or something like baseball tickets or something. But the point was like you had to spend it on something splurging. Like it wasn't just, a $200 bonus that went in your bank account and you forgot it the next day. It was an experience that you wouldn't have done for yourself. And I thought things like that were really thoughtful and cool and what separated the company culturally from a lot of employers in the region. And so there was a lot of thought given on the attraction side. I think retention was easy in the beginning. We had probably like a 90 something percent retention rate. I mean, it was absolutely insane. And I think wages played into it. The company was constantly getting pressed for how much higher its median wages were versus state and national averages,
I didn't know that.
Which was impressive. You had, I mentioned, perks and things like that. You had fulfillment. You had work that people cared about, they believed in. We were the market leader. And I don't discount that. I mean, it's got to suck, I think, working for a big company that's like number 2 or number 3 in every category. And you're just, your strategy is copying the leader. I mean, that can be a profitable venture, but I can't imagine for, people who want to be entrepreneurs or innovators get much fulfillment from that. So talent-wise, I think we all enjoyed winning and really creating new markets. And then, there was also the employee stock program, which I think is important for retention of top talent. It's if somebody's going to leave and I'll be candid with you all. I almost left midway through my career. And that was when I got introduced to the employee stock program, and started thinking about it differently. Now I'm an owner in this culture in a sense. And I think that is an important retention tool for your top talent, because if they don't directly see the benefit to them for creating all of this opportunity, all of this growth, there's probably not going to be that loyalty. I mean, all of the other stuff helps, but I think that upside is really critical. I'm a big proponent of it, that businesses, big and small, should figure out a way to bring more employees in as owners, even if they're very small fractional shares, because you want to feel like what you're doing is ultimately contributing to the value of the company. And so that to me was the biggest thing that they did. And there were a lot of people that had a life-changing event at the exit of Big Ass Fans. And so that was really, really cool. I know the founder to this day is incredibly proud of how many lives were changed. And, it wasn't just gifts. People participated and helped build. But it's one of those things I think was progressive, and it's becoming more common. But for a fan manufacturer in central Kentucky, that was a novel and innovative concept, I think, when it was introduced. So I always thought the business was thinking ahead about what was going to make it successful, and people, being able to attract, coming full circle here, being able to attract and retain talent is absolutely paramount to the success of a company. It won't work any other way.
A couple of themes that I think are so important, and you hit especially on one of them, is ownership, that we talk a lot about with companies. If people do not feel ownership or the ability to bring an idea to the table and know that they have agency over the future or the current state of the company, then innovation isn't likely going to happen, or it will only in small incremental ways over time. And while it sounds like, Big Ass Fans did that to such a large degree, even if a company isn't willing to change floors every 6 months, employees have to have the ability to know that I can bring an idea to the table and I've ownership over what is happening here. And so I think those are two of my favorite, I think, themes out of the story, that you don't have to jump in with the deep end and be as progressive. Hopefully a lot of companies are inspired to do so, because obviously look at the change that Big Ass Fans has made. And the other thing I want to say too that I love is you don't have to be a sexy company to function in a really cool progressive way. You guys sold fans. It's not interesting. It is a ceiling fan. The last time I even thought about a ceiling fan is never. But I love that the founder didn't let that change, that we are going to take ownership and be an interesting, dynamic place to work. You said people cared about their jobs. There was fulfillment. It was fans and people felt fulfillment. So I want to encourage it because, we have so much industry here in Kentucky. Not all of it is particularly like internationally newsworthy we're not necessarily Amazon or having the next exciting tech ideas on an app per se, but it doesn't matter what you're doing. You can still be innovative in the way that you do business.
Well, a line that I always go to when I'm doing like speaking engagements, things like that, is there are no boring categories. There are only boring brands. And I 100% believe that. I think the unsexy industries and categories are the best because there's less competition. It's easier to differentiate and stand out. And it's unexpected. And that was what was so jarring. Obviously the name, you can't forget it and it's so perfect. But the company put so much energy into industrial design, customer experience, unique marketing approaches. Everybody remembers the stress donkeys and, the coffee mugs and hats and stuff like that were a lot of fun. And you're right. It's like, I don't expect this from my ceiling fan manufacturer, but that's what made it so unique and different. And so I think there's tons of opportunity in the region for, you don't have to be in tech. You can make physical things. You can be in an old guard industry, and you can still innovate from a culture standpoint, from, go to market, all these things. There's areas for upside. So I love that you point that out because I do think, especially younger entrepreneurs come in and think that it's got to be tech or it's got to be this. There's opportunity in the margins and in places where other people ignore it.
Yeah, it's a lot of the response we get from companies that we now work with, many who are actually in the building industry as well, which is a very old guard industry. And they say, well, we're not a tech company. We don't do hackathons. And you don't have to be a tech company to do, innovation experiences for your employees, et cetera. But I want to take this opportunity to jump to another really boring industry, which is cleaning products. So you decided to go from fans to cleaning solutions. What in the world made you decide to jump into a new venture? It sounds like you obviously met your co-founder at Big Ass Fans, but what did that transition look like?
Well, we were exploratory of different industries. We knew we wanted to do something more entrepreneurial. And so we started looking at industries where we thought we could actually take pages from the Big Ass Fans playbook. And, maybe there was poor branding, little product differentiation, the channel or the supply chain was broken, the customer experience was broken or non-existent. And, cleaning checked all of these boxes, hadn't changed. All of the cleaners, they look and work the same. They're all incredibly inefficient. So when you think about Big Ass Fans, the concept was instead of using a bunch of small fans that, suck up energy and floor space and whatever, we're just going to put one big one over there. It saves a ton of energy and space.
Big ass fan in the middle of the room.
And so we took that cue with cleaning. We thought, why are people, shipping products that are 98% water when we have water at home and then throwing out the bottle and sprayer after one use? Like the supply chain's broken. Nobody's winning, whether it's the manufacturer, the retailer, the customer. And then, branding. There just wasn't a lot of interest from our perspective in kind of unique voice, unique persona. It was all either aspirational or extremely like chemical and sterile sounding brands. And so we saw an opportunity in the middle to kind of develop a unique voice. I think there was just this attraction to boring industries like we talked about. Like for me, that's a lot of fun because it's unexpected. And so we were able to build Truman's into something that people really thought was fun and different and engaging. And I think when, we did the build in public thing, where we took the idea, like literally renderings, and put them on a splash page, and solicited feedback. And we did that for about 6 months, shipping demo product from our garage, that kind of thing. And by the time we launched, we had 10,000 people who had signed up to be notified like when we were going to start shipping product, which was a really good tell for us that there was something here. Like people actually, there was more emotion involved. We kind of thought cleaning was not emotional, but it was like, okay, people actually can like their cleaning brand. Like we can make a connection here. We can tell a story. And we parlayed that into a really successful launch. Like our demand was much higher than we had forecasted. Our customers were much more engaged. Like I had made the biggest mistake saying we won't need customer service because like who needs help cleaning? Like you spray it on a surface and you wipe it. But when we turned on live chat, it started dinging, questions about ingredients. Is it safe for this surface? Like my kid has this allergy. Like it was like, oh my gosh, there really is this untapped desire to establish a relationship with the brand that they're using that it just can't be met because it's all sold at retail. Why is it all sold at retail? Well, that's because you can't ship profitably a $3 bottle of glass cleaner to somebody's home. It's got to go on pallets, in big trucks and then sit on a shelf where somebody goes and picks it up for themselves. And so there were all these breaks that we were like, we can do this if we shrink the footprint, we change the user experience, we're cutting waste out in the process, we're increasing margin, and a byproduct is we can actually talk to our customers, hear what they want, and then turn that into a virtuous cycle. We can actually improve the product. We can actually launch new things. We can change the way we take it to market based on this feedback. And so all of these little things were super exciting to us because I think the more breaks you find, the more you ask, like, why is it that way? You realize, like I said, there's opportunity in the margins where nobody in that industry wants to upset the way it's done right now because there's a lot of risk to that. And they don't want to, piss off their customer, which is the retailer. And so there's limitation to what the big guys in the space can do. And so I think that's why you see startups pop up in general. They're doing something because they feel like it's harder for bigger companies to do or they're incapable of doing it. And that was very much how we felt about the cleaning industry.
Sounds like you guys are tapping into, I don't think consumers are smarter now. It's probably insulting to previous generations, but I do think we are more
informed.
Thank you. We are more informed and more aware that it doesn't have to be this way. My husband and I are opening up an Airbnb and which, yes, has been as stressful as everyone said it would be. Turns out you can't avoid that. But I went into Walmart for the first time in forever and I realized, why haven't I been in here? Because I don't really buy retail brands. I buy brands direct to consumer for the most part. I have things shipped to my door and also probably Amazon, like Walmart can blame them. But I thought about you guys as I walked through the cleaning aisle because you had mentioned it's so much water being shipped and there's just all these water-based products on the table. And what is shipped to my door was an empty plastic bottle and a concentrate. And you guys were one of the first to do it. And now there's so many others that are adopting that philosophy. And I do think our generation cares about ingredients, about the allergies, about, the disruptors over a long period of time. So I think it's brilliant and the timing that you guys had getting into the market.
Yeah, there has been a lot of innovation and investment in the space, which is exciting. I think every company kind of sets the big vision in the beginning, like what do we want to accomplish besides being personally, successful? And for us, it was we wanted to see the market shift to concentrates to, we set a goal of like 50% over the next 10 years, where when you go into Walmart, hopefully 5, 6, 7 years from now, the shelf is going to look different. So even if you buy it at retail, there's not going to be all that unnecessary waste. And we've talked to senior leadership at most of these retailers. It is happening. It's coming. There are obstacles that need to be considered and worked around, but it is becoming popularized, this concept of reducing. Recycling is okay. The stats on that show it's pretty imperfect, and we need to figure out ways to just take this obvious waste out of supply chains, and that's across all industries. And I think you're right. Consumers are starting to recognize that there are viable alternatives. I mean, when we launched, I couldn't tell you how many people didn't even realize that these products are mostly water, that the active ingredients make up about 2% of the total volume. So, and why would you, right? I mean, nobody's ever told that story. The big players in the space certainly don't want you to know that. And so there is more education and more information out there with the internet and, social media and stuff like that. So this change is happening. And for us, that's exciting because, we said the same thing at Big Ass Fans. We wanted to change the way people thought about ceiling fans. We wanted to change the way they look, the way they function, so that when you're on your deathbed and all fans have started moving in this direction, you're like, yeah, that we started that, we did that. Like, those are kind of cool things, I think, in your career beyond just, financial success and things that you can actually point back and say, look at the impact that we had through the work we were doing.
And I just want to call it too. I think we love Kentucky. We all have just such a passion, and you guys did that from Kentucky. You guys have made a stamp on an international industry ultimately, but on just so many trends. I think that's got to be exciting for you to sit at home and be like, I've truly made a ripple in the way the world functions, and that's a really cool feeling. I have a final question for you. For the executives, the employees at corporate companies sitting out there, what are maybe 1 to 3 things that you hope at minimum that they take away from your experience, whether that be at Truman's or certainly at Big Ass Fans?
It's a great question, and I'm always wary of prescriptive advice because situations are so unique. But I'll give a nod to the book that my co-founder wrote called The Elephant's Dilemma. I don't know if you're familiar with the analogy of the tethered elephant, but at circuses, they used to tether the baby elephants to a stake in the ground. And they never had to change it as the elephant got bigger because the elephant had learned that it couldn't go anywhere. So even when it became this, powerful animal, it could have easily moved the stake and gone away. It never did. And he used that analogy to describe what it's like for senior executives in corporate America. They've been kind of conditioned to thinking they have to move slowly and they can't innovate from the confines of, the C-suite at these bigger companies. And it's really a reflection on it is possible. You can do it. You can have an impact within your organization. He left. I think he was proud of a lot of the work he did at his big company at GE. He left to a smaller company to have an impact at Big Ass Fans, and then left to an even smaller company. But the point wasn't that you have to quit your job and go start a company, but look for opportunities to get those small wins and innovate within your organization. How can you incrementally change the way things are being done for the better? And I think so many times we just fall into the trap of just business as usual. You go through the motions, and the last thing, speaking of deathbeds again, you want to be sitting back on and reflecting is all the things you didn't do, all the chances you didn't take. And again, this isn't a plea for everybody to quit their job and start a company. I don't think that's for everybody, but you got to get out of that mindset of I'm just moving the ball forward little by little each day, and find those opportunities to kind of reimagine the way you work. So it's a lot of it, I guess, what it boils down to is reflection on what impact can you make, how can things be better, and then making an earnest effort. If your environment doesn't allow it, then maybe it is time to go somewhere else. But I think people don't ask enough questions. They don't think often enough about why things are the way they are. So there's tons of opportunity for innovation in big companies. And to be an entrepreneur, you don't need permission, but you do need to have that curiosity. You do need to seek it out. So, that's the best form of general advice I can give, because like I said, everybody's situation, everybody's risk profile, all of that's unique. But look for those opportunities even within your organization to make a difference.
That's perfect. We are so excited for people to be able to listen to this episode once published. You guys can you can follow our newsletter at innovationincubated.com. We will also likely release it on our social media. This one might be good enough that we might make people subscribe to the newsletter for it. That's what makes you special. Alex, we found it.
We did. It took the entire recording, but we found something.
It took 39 minutes and 15 seconds. But no, everyone, thank you for sticking with us. Alex, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I'm very excited for people to hear about this. And we will make it a 3-peat at some point. We will have you back, I'm sure.
I am looking forward to it, Liz. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you know someone who should be on our show, even if it's you, reach out to us at innovationincubated.com. And while you're on our website, sign up for our newsletter. Lastly, thanks to our sponsor, Apex Software. The right software partner can change everything. So reach out today at apexsoftware.com. Until next time, go team.